Neil Katyal is the former acting U.S. Solicitor General. Andrew Weissmann is the former general counsel at the FBI and a senior member of special counsel Robert Mueller's team. And Lisa Rubin is an MSNBC legal correspondent. This is like a trove of legal brains here. So, Neil, I want to start with you. I mean, you've argued more cases. I've almost lost track. We said in front of the Supreme Court. You were in the court on Thursday. What was your biggest takeaway from listening to the questioning and the back and forth then?
Yeah, you know, Jen, I've seen over 400 arguments there, and most of the times when you walk out of the Supreme Court, you know what's going to happen. And that was not true here. It was very hard to predict where the justices will wind up. And that itself is my biggest takeaway. This should have been an easy case. As you said, Jen, at the beginning of the show, Trump's lawyer was making bonkers arguments. And by contrast, the lawyer for Jack Smith, Michael Dreeben, was very erudite and scholarly and collegial. And I think if you weren't in the courtroom, it sounded very much like just a scholarly disquisition, and it wasn't really persuasion. In the courtroom, I think that Michael Dreeben made a lot of points that did land with the justices. And I think the most chilling point came with it was at 11:55 a.m., almost 2 hours after the argument began. Dreeben had been talking for more than an hour, and he described to the justices something that you were saying, this is not hypothetical. Here's what this indictment says Donald Trump did to the Justice Department, pressuring the Justice Department to try and send letters to state legislatures saying there was election fraud and the like, and then threatening to fire those DOJ staffers when they refused to do that. And the justices did really perk up there. So I saw 4 justices, Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, Jackson, and also Justice Barrett, I think, really rejecting this absolute immunity claim. And the question is, where is the Chief Justice on this? He was playing his cards close to the vest.
Yeah, such an interesting piece. Andrew, let me turn this question to you. I mean, did anything surprise you, and what did you make of any tea leaves on the Chief Justice?
Well, I think that it's important to remember that at the outset, the court had already given Donald Trump the win that he was seeking, which is the delay of the D.C. trial. So going into this was all upside for him. I mean, I think he had to be thinking, I'm making this really outlandish argument with ramifications that couldn't possibly be squared with the text and history, the text of the Constitution or the history of the presidency. So it's all upside if the court would actually bite on this. And so what was surprising is that there were justices who actually were taking this seriously. And it just was frankly shocking. Remember, going into this, the given was that private conduct was certainly not immunized from criminal liability. But what everyone's talking about now is, hey, maybe they'll think that some of this is private and they can go forward. But that was what was a given going into this. And the reason people are thinking that is because there seem to be 4 justices who are really taking Donald Trump's claim of criminal immunity seriously. And we are, I mean, I know it sounds like hyperbole, but I think your opening is so correct that we are essentially, as Neil put it, one vote away from sort of the end of democracy as we know it, with checks and balances. And to say it's an imperial presidency that would be created is frankly saying it would be a king. He would be criminally immune. And that is what is so shocking, is how close we are. And we are really on the razor's edge of that kind of result, but for the Chief Justice.
Yeah, I mean, one vote away. When you put it in those terms, Andrew, it is very, very stark. Lisa, I wanted to ask you, and Andrew sort of referenced this, I think, if I was hearing him correctly. I mean, Amy Coney Barrett had a kind of line of questioning that jumped out to me. I'm not a lawyer, though, where she was basically pinning Trump's lawyer down on the distinction between official and private acts. I mean, did that stick out to you? And what are they trying to get at? What is she trying to get at there in your assessment?
I think she's trying to get at the fact that the indictment mostly alleges a number of things that are private acts, that despite the characterization of John Sauer as many of the acts alleged in the indictment as official, that actually they're anything but. In fact, at one point, the president advanced a defense on the basis of the First Amendment. And those two things can't coexist. You can't say on one hand that he's been charged with what are primarily official acts, and on the other hand, claim First Amendment protection, because the First Amendment would not apply to the president but for the fact that he's acting in a personal or campaign capacity. So I think Amy Coney Barrett trying to suss out and pin down John Sauer with respect to the actual allegations in this indictment were both helpful and surprising, because no one had Amy Coney Barrett necessarily on their bingo card as the swing vote here.
Yeah, and I certainly didn't, and it sounds like most of you didn't either. Neil, I want to play a moment from Justice Alito during these arguments. Let's play that, and I want to talk to you about it on the other side.
If an incumbent who loses a very close, hotly contested election knows that a real possibility after leaving office is not that the president is going to be able to go off into a peaceful retirement, but that the president may be criminally prosecuted by a bitter political opponent, will that not lead us into a cycle that destabilizes the functioning of our country as a democracy?
I mean, he seems to be arguing in plain English that immunity is necessary because otherwise presidents will fear prosecution and be therefore incentivized to attempt to hold onto power unlawfully, if I heard that all correctly. But Neil, what did you make of that statement by Alito?
Yeah, I thought it had missed two really important things. One, the over 200-year history of this country in which that's literally never happened, even though we've always thought that presidents were subject to criminal liability. And second, it ignored the remarks made very powerfully in January 2021 when a lawyer went to the Congress and said, do not impeach President Trump. Instead, you can indict him after he leaves office on January 20th. That person was Donald Trump's own lawyer. So Trump in the impeachment was saying, I can't be impeached, I can only be indicted. Now that he's left office, he's saying, I can't be indicted either, and of course I can't be impeached. So, this is all just a recipe to put him above the law.
He's said a lot of things that come back sometimes to bite.